Welcome to Media Break. You give us 3 minutes and we'll give you the world. Yesterday's controversial vote in the Commons passing legislation to end the criminalisation of narcotic possession is being hailed as the first major step to what in time could be complete legalisation.
How are you?
You know me. Bit of a mess, really.
Do I know you?
In 30 years as a serving police officer, in every rank from constable to chief constable, I've dealt with drugs in one way or another. And as the problem has got bigger, more unmanageable, it becomes clearer and clearer that the only way to deal with it is by legalization.
Legalising and regulating drugs is the only way to collapse the illegal drug markets created by prohibition and to reclaim the market back from the gangsters.
Legalising drugs is a leap in the dark. We are going to have to pay an enormous amount in money, in human tragedies, and the consequences are going to be very heavy on somebody's conscience.
Thousands of people use drugs every weekend because they can get some enjoyment out of that from what can be otherwise a boring life.
It's going to be a fine night tonight. It's going to be a fine night It's a fine day. People open windows.
Prohibition is a singular failure. It's failed on its own terms to reduce the amount of drugs and to affect the prices significantly. We now have more drugs in this country than ever before at far cheaper prices. We'd like to see drugs legalised throughout the entire supply chain, from production to use. So we might see cannabis available from licensed retailers in the same way that tobacco is. Pharmaceutical drugs like LSD and ecstasy available from specialist pharmacists. Cocaine and heroin probably only available under prescription from a doctor.
I'd really like it if people could go to buy their drugs legally without being criminalised, and know what they were getting and know that that was as safe as it could be.
I don't accept the proposition that our current system has failed. Most people are not lifelong users of drugs. There may be some experimentation when they're young, but they don't carry on.
People take drugs because they want to and because they feel they've got that right, and most of the time there's not a lot stopping them. You can get psychedelic drugs that make you hallucinate and enhance your vision. There are stimulant drugs such as ecstasy and amphetamines which can keep yourself going and make you feel more charged up.
Oh, what tiny have you seen that?
I'm stardust, baby. Oh.
Josie!
Josie!
Josie! Josie! Josie! Are you going to get someone? What's happened to her? What's happened to her?
Legalisation of all the currently illegal drugs would be quite a terrifying scenario. And what I see with drugs legalised is far more users, far more in-depth use, far more polydrug use. So legalise drugs, and you've got a very bad scenario where some of these things are going to be used heavily by people for most of their working life and beyond. And, of course, some of them are not going to survive.
I believe people should have the freedom of choice to do what they want to their own bodies if it's not infringing on anybody else.
Where? Toilets! What's their condition? Wasting. You don't have to be a doctor to see that.
Some water, quick. Josie! Tom! Oh! Josie!
Can you hear me? Josie? Josie, can you hear me?
She doesn't look too good.
Neither do you.
Her heart rate's all over the place.
You're going to be okay, babe. You're going to be okay.
What has she taken?
A few A's, some blues. I don't know just what they sell in here.
We only sell licensed legits. I mean, that's what they come down here for. No illegals, no coke, no heroin. Don't get any of that shit in here.
I'm losing that.
Tanya! Oh, do something!
Keep your focus. Let's get them out. Come on, Josie.
It's not illegal!
Okay, Josie. Okay.
Legalizing drugs is madness. You're going to get more people using drugs, less people able to work, and more people suffering as a consequence.
We need to legalize drugs precisely because they're dangerous, not because they're safe. Putting drugs back into the hands of government enables us to put health warnings on ingredients listings, enables people to actually find out what these drugs do. Banning them hands their control over to organised criminals who aren't interested in the safety of their consumers whatsoever.
Yeah, I think we might have a problem.
The fact is that prohibition has been such an unmitigated disaster, and is continuing to be so, that it contains the seeds of its own destruction within it. The amount of money, the amount of resources put into it are actually causing more chaos. Senior politicians, political advisors, police officers, commentators from all walks of life are now saying that this is something that must end, and it will do, because it has failed.
I know from my 30 years' experience in the pharmaceutical industry in the United States and Western Europe and in Japan that the pharmaceutical industry is the best placed industry to take advantage of the legalization of drugs. Because they would have the development capability to produce drugs which do not have the addictive capabilities of current drugs but can give you the stimulus.
Good morning. Recreational sales have increased by almost 300%. Now, even taking into account patent protections and counterfeiting breaches, we're still seeing profits 62% above projections.
There is a tremendous bonanza to be made from recreational drugs. There is probably a marketplace of between 5 and 8 billion pounds. That equals almost the total money that is spent currently on the National Health Service for pharmaceutical products.
This is our most recent product. It's currently under EU license review. The most exciting thing about dexclorazole is that it's been entirely created from our own antidepressant research.
Elaborate on exciting.
In the case of dexclorazole, increased energy, attention, cognitive powers, all blended with a smooth dopamine release.
Sounds like pharmaceutical cocaine.
Well, it is for the recreational market.
I didn't spend 17 years at this company to see my research used in this way.
Research this company invested billions in.
Oh, so now we're an entertainment business rather than a medical?
Doctor, please. We all have strong opinions on this issue, but this is not the time. Mr. Gibson, continue.
Take dexclorazole, and you'll do your job better, play harder, and feel more than you ever have straight. It's Prozac, with the volume at 1,000.
He still thinks he's selling trainers.
There will be divisions within companies and amongst the medical profession. And the key issue is, why are we developing products for recreational purposes rather than products which cure people of diseases? Eventually, the commercial area will win out. Very simply, this is a consumer-driven marketplace where customers want the product.
When drugs are legalised, an organisation like Off-Drug could oversee the regulatory framework from production through to use. So they'd look after the growers, for instance, and pharmaceutical producers.
Commissioner?
Miss Parker, have a seat.
Make sure that people selling drugs and premises where people were using drugs were licensed correctly, that the prices were set at the right levels, and that safer use warnings and ingredients listings were on the packaging.
Tanya Williams was pronounced dead on arrival. Josie Mills is in a coma. Santa Clegg is in intensive care. All suffered acute respiratory trauma. So far, nothing indicates it was caused by illegals, so it falls into our lab.
A body like Off-Drug would also have an investigative arm to help police this new industry, particularly at the supply manufacturing ends.
It's essential we rule out any possibility of this being a drug we license.
And if it is one?
Due to the criminal nature of this investigation, we're going to be cooperating with the National Crime Bureau. You'll be working with Detective Jack Rydell.
Since when do drug officers transfer to the NCB?
Since legalization, half the size of that department. Rydell's been on the force 8 years. His street IQ's unsurpassed. He's been down deep and dirty. But, he's got a reputation. 6 years ago, his cover was compromised during a narcotics operation. Off the record, I think he's damaged goods.
Prohibition has gifted the entire drugs market to organised criminals. The profit margins are so huge that you'd be a fool not to operate in it.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name?
Any professional criminal who's making good money is involved in the drugs trade. It's estimated that it's the third largest business in the world, and the other two in competition for the top place are the oil business and the arms trade. And the whole business is run by criminals. It's an absurd failure of policy on a global scale.
The price of drugs is determined by the illegal market, by organised criminals and unregulated dealers. Consequently, the price is incredibly high. Someone with a £50 a day habit is likely to have to resort to crime to support that. Legalisation enables us to control the price in such a way that those people don't have to steal.
You got it?
Lots of it. Oh! 60-40 tomorrow.
Profit margins are anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000%, and that's unheard of in any other commodity on the planet.
If drugs were legalised, the markup may go down to sort of 200 to 300% rather than 2,000 to 3,000%, so the price would drop very dramatically. Because people will no longer be taking the same level of risk in actually transporting it across national boundaries and then, once it's in the country, distributing it.
Oh yeah, Mark, this is Jack. Jack? Mark. Jack's all right. He's my new friend.
Just so long as he's all right.
I don't think we can legalize drugs. As a doctor, I see people coming in to our department with all kinds of drug-related problems of their heart, their lung, their brain, on a daily basis. It will take a number of years before the real long-term burden of drugs on physical and mental health becomes apparent.
It's a pill.
Who gave it to you?
Tracy. She's given it to try out.
Try out?
And so are you.
Does trying out happen a lot?
A pill is handed to you that your mate's been given. You don't know where it came from or what it is, but you drop it like it's a Smartie. It's brilliant.
The anti-legalization lobby are citing this tragedy as evidence of the policy's failure.
This tragedy proves the government's got it wrong. Drug legalization is a disaster.
I used to work the graveyard beat around here.
Must be a lot safer since legalization.
Must be.
Why did you quit the drug squad?
Been doing your homework?
I like to know who I'm working with.
I did 2 years undercover and 6 months in rehab. Got rewarded with a desk instead of a street. So I quit.
If drugs were legalised, I worry about the message that would send out. It would give a message to children and young people that drugs are okay, and drugs are not okay. They're not okay for the individual, and they're not okay for their families.
And in breaking news, Off-Drug has said it will use all its power to find the source of the drug that resulted in last week's club tragedy. The pharmaceutical industry has denied allegations that it's more interested in profit than in people. It's accused Off-Drug of being on a witch hunt.
Dr. Kajir, you wanted to see me.
But an insider from Amuta Farm has told our programme that it's actually the recreational division that's driving company sales.
Your recreational department is supposed to be part of Omta's background, not newspaper headlines.
And your scientists should respect their confidentiality agreements.
The revenue you generate is only beneficial if it doesn't destroy our reputation.
Either we adapt our drugs or somebody else will. People do drugs. Nothing's going to change that. We provide safe, tested, licensed products. We're the good guys.
I wonder sometimes exactly what methods the good guys are using.
There are severe concerns amongst a lot of people about the ethics and business practices of pharmaceutical companies in particular.
Pharmaceutical companies will develop a stealth strategy to manage the problem of ethics and morals within the industry. They will create companies which they will manage at arm's length, which they own, which will then produce the products, the recreational drugs, but they will not suffer from public censure because they are not connected to the main company.
Alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, heroin, cocaine, they're all dangerous. Does anybody think that alcohol was made safer during Prohibition in the United States? Of course it wasn't. So there's all sorts of danger associated with the fact that drugs are illegal. You get impurities, you get substitutes, you get dangerous poisons included in them, you don't know what strength you're going to get. If you provide them at an outlet such as a tobacconist's, then where's the illegality? Where's the danger to health that's going to arise from that? Of course, drugs are bad for people, tobacco is bad for people, but does that mean it should be wholly banned?
This is Rival. Need a forensics team to come and do a DNA sweep.
I got these, but my guess, they'll all come back as legits. The DNA sweep results gave 337 confirmed IDs from the club.
Stop. Go back. No. 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 Yes.
Who's he?
Unfinished business. We run a check, Mark Pavel, all recent location data.
If drugs were legalised, we get new forms of drugs crime. I've spent 37 years chasing international drug traffickers. These people are very clever, resourceful. They will see new ways of making money. They'll provide a replica product. They'll provide a stronger product. We can't beat them by legalising.
You coming?
I want to see doctors in the UK supplying heroin free on the NHS to all addicts who needed it, as much as they need it, safely, and they would consume it there, which would prevent any heroin leaking out of the clinics and into the community. They would then not need to steal to fund their habit. There would be an enormous reduction in crime, and you would, at a stroke, abolish most, not all, of course, of the illegal heroin market.
The real harm of heroin is that people become addicted to it and need to take it on a compulsive basis. Once somebody is addicted, they need to pay a large amount of money out, perhaps £15,000 a year. That is a lot of money, and it leads to crime.
Provisions are already in place where we can prescribe heroin to dependent users. The Swiss currently have 22 clinics where they're doing that. The Dutch do it, the Germans are looking at doing it, the Canadians, all over Europe, they're looking at this kind of thing. We're lagging a long way behind.
If you don't get diseases related to injecting practice, well then you can take heroin for the rest of your life and it's not going to cause direct harm, although you remain addicted to it.
We have the most rampant heroin problem precisely because we aren't effectively addressing it. More people get it illegally than any other country in the Western world.
When it comes to smack, the Prime Minister gets the best gear. Typical. They realise they can't get rid of it, they start giving it away. Nick my best customers.
Look on the bright side.
At least it keeps the likes of them from mugging your ma.
Some drugs are quite dangerous in themselves. That some drugs are actually made illegal for very good reason. Particularly stimulants like amphetamine and cocaine can actually cause and precipitate unprovoked violent attacks on people, so that if they were made freely available, the level of violence in society could actually go up quite considerably.
The amount of crime that's currently required to feed the heroin addict's habit is 1/3 of the total crime in this country. That crime would just be unnecessary.
The resource implications for every town and village to have a heroin clinic is just too much. Where are the resources coming from? Is this about hip operations that are going to be missed?
Surprisingly, the Swiss, having done perhaps a typically careful cost-benefit analysis, have discovered that providing clinics with doctors and nurses and all the buildings, and indeed the heroin itself, is actually cheaper on the economy than not doing so, because it saves so much in the costs of the criminal justice system.
You look like shit. Very kind of you to say so. What's up? This is up. What are they? No idea. That's the problem. I have this new gig, giving this stuff away in nightclubs. The other day I'm doing my stuff. 3 girls OD. 1 dead.
Think that stuff caused it?
I'm a salesman, not a chemist.
Skipping around, I'll say, look at him. He's skipping around like a little lamb. Skipping around like a little lamb in these heavy, hanging days. In the dead world sea.
Working with a drug squad during Prohibition was a great way to avoid having a life. You work 24/7, prowling around, dodging coastal seizures, crack things, gang infiltration in the end.
Rock, blowing shooters.
Managed to get a line on this meth and heroin crew run by Pavel. Wedged my way in through one of his dealers. DS wanted me to join Pavel. Win his trust.
How do you win a drug dealer's trust?
Starving.
You don't look the same without the numbers across your chest.
I'll see you later then, Mark.
The principal cause of murders in this country, which used to be domestic violence, is probably now drug-related violence. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Of course, there's an enormous amount of other violence and crime associated with drugs.
Now back off.
Give me the gun. Hands behind your back. cups.
And all this time, I thought you'd forgotten about me.
Club Supreme, last Thursday. You were there.
Really?
I've got 2 girls in hospital.
Another one dead. All caused by a drug. And you're a drug dealer. You see a pattern emerging here?
Why do they always paint these rooms this shit color?
This is a government building. You don't smoke.
You know, Jack used to work for me.
Before he stole my woman. It's not exactly fair, is it, Jack?
She actually fell for him.
Didn't she?
He's not happy with you.
Why's that?
Because he thinks I fancy you.
If drugs were legalised, the prison population would be halved. Drug-related street prostitution would disappear completely. The government estimates that crime costs associated with drug-related offending are $16 billion a year. There are massive savings to be made here. The question we've got to ask ourselves is, why do we want to criminalise the use of any drug? All drugs, in our view, should be legalised because it enables control and regulation.
To suggest legalizing cocaine and even crack is absolute madness, because crack is incredibly harmful. It's extremely addictive. It's probably the most addictive of the substances that we have around. People will take cocaine and they seem to have no problem. Suddenly they find they just crave for it.
Thanks, Sharon.
So what did Parvel mean when he said you used to work for him?
I bought drugs. Sold drugs. Set people up. Grassed out the competition. Became a criminal.
Yeah, but a criminal for the right side.
Well, since legalisation, there are no sides.
But having seen what you have, you must have welcomed the end of prohibition.
Politicians call it progress. They should just admit it was defeat.
People do what they want. Laws have little effect on that. I mean, it's just human nature.
I think society would like to believe that most people that take drugs can't hold down their jobs, that they're not good in their families. I know a lot of people that take drugs regularly, they still get degrees, they've still got jobs, they still drive nice cars and they still hold down nice families.
The Home Office estimates the value of the UK illegal drugs trade at £6.6 billion a year. That money is currently going to criminals. We could tax that money under legalisation and spend it on hospitals, schools, police officers and even drug treatment.
We were commissioned to produce an exclusive study for the BBC for this programme on how much the government could reasonably expect to raise in taxation from a legalised drugs market. And we found that the figure would be somewhere between £1 billion and £4 billion a year.
Hello? Right. Josie Mills is dead.
And you thought this was going to have a happy ending?
She'd just turned 20.
Happy birthday.
The pathology report shows trace elements of tricyclic and amphetamines. But it's just as useless as my toxicology test in identifying where the drug came from.
Well, whatever it was, it killed her.
There's nothing here that pinpoints any specific known drug.
Yeah, it must be unknown.
I'm sorry, but the person you've called is not available. Please leave your message after the tone.
Yeah, the NCB have me. They're asking me lots of questions. About girls ODing, drugs and nightclubs. So far I have amnesia. If you want it to stay that way, get me out of here.
There are several million cannabis users in this country, and at present they're all on the wrong side of the law. For no sensible reason, except that by accident, in the early 1920s, when the laws internationally on this were set down, cannabis wasn't in regular use in the Western world, and nicotine and alcohol were. If you looked at it now, you'd have a law where cannabis was supplied legally.
Cannabis legalisation is much closer than we think. Progressive drug law reform is taking place throughout the whole world. The Portuguese have decriminalised the possession of all drugs, as have the Spanish, the Italians and the Dutch. Government officials in Switzerland and Holland are already discussing the full legalisation of the production and supply of cannabis.
People who say that cannabis is harmless are wrong. There's plenty of evidence now that cannabis is associated with 2 to 4 times the rate of schizophrenia that we have in the community. And it's very difficult to treat. I'm often phoned by parents who have usually a son who was doing very, very well, started smoking pot, and now he's nowhere.
The danger of a fully legalised market would be that too many people would have access to drugs in unlimited quantities. For certain drugs, there has to be some control on the availability.
Jack, I was going over the forensics on the club, and another name comes up. Carrie Lucas. She was court-ordered into state rehab 5 years ago.
Check out every person who's ever been cautioned over a controlled substance, then we may as well haul in the phone book.
Yeah? But how many of them are also synthetic chemists?
Hello?
Inspector Parker from Off Drug, and this is Detective Rydell from the NCB. We'd like to ask you a few questions.
Top flat. Yeah, I was in the club that night.
You were there when those girls overdosed.
Me and 200 others.
In your expert opinion, what do you think really happened?
My expert opinion.
Both girls may have been killed by an unlicensed drug, and you're a drug-taking chemist.
That was a long time ago.
You're not a user anymore?
No, I'm not. In fact, I work with an anti-drugs group now.
Then what were you doing in a drugs club?
My job, I hand out literature to users. People are being manipulated into becoming addicts by the big pharmaceutical companies. I'm just trying to educate people to what drugs really are.
And what are they?
You know, I suffered enough because of my addictions. I just want to help a few people from becoming like me. Licensed drugs are just tobacco and junk food all over again. I wonder why it always happens this way.
What way?
It always takes a few bodies on the ground before anyone does anything.
We're not saying that legalisation is a panacea to the drug problem. Drug taking is risky, and there'll still be drug-related deaths. But what we will be able to do is address the underlying issues of drug misuse, like poverty, lack of opportunity, and homelessness. Drug misuse is a symptom, not a cause.
They're sexy lifestyle images. Think, I want to be that person in the picture.
I think advertising restrictions will apply to recreational drugs in the same way that they apply now to tobacco products and possibly in the near future to alcohol.
What do legals say about this?
Oh, we'll get away with it.
Obviously, pharmaceutical companies will want to get around this because they're creating a new industry, a new business, and a new marketplace. And I think that government will probably be receptive to this because why kill off a new industry?
The internet orders were actually down 0.7%, so I got the ad guys to sex up some of the pop-ups.
You know, advertising standards are coming down hard on web commercials.
Well, we're feeding it through Indonesia. We're not going to go through UK.
You're good, Carl. You're very good.
Thanks.
I'm not surprised that some people will try and get around the ban on direct-to-consumer advertising by using the internet. However, no self-respecting pharmaceutical company would allow this to happen.
I'm impressed, Carl. I'll have a re-meet at 6, OK?
OK, 6 o'clock. Live life in 6 o'clock. Right.
We need more time.
Thanks. 24 hours. We either book Pavel or cut him loose. What's that?
That is what I think killed them. Problem is, it's not anything illegal or anything licensed.
Xana Cloak said they'd taken several drugs. Could they combine and form that?
No, 2 drugs would only show as 1 drug if they were combined in a lab and then ingested.
Deliberately?
Well, it would have to be.
What, can a computer search for that?
Yep. Oh, shit.
You sort the warrants. I'll see you there. Dr. Kadja.
Doctor, I'm so sorry.
Jack Rydell, National Crime Bureau.
Thank you, Fiona. Inspector, you need either an appointment or a warrant.
Yeah. About 10 minutes ago, 2 High Court subpoenas hit your firewall. They cleared your fibre optic lines and they opened your mainframe to us. Your tech boys' alarms should be ringing about now.
Moshi. いや、ここにいるよ。いや、大丈夫だ。いや、何か分かったら本社に連絡する。
They just hate it when the other guy's right.
Although we want to see the legalisation of drugs, we recognise that there's a historical problem that the government's had in controlling the drugs industry as a whole. That includes alcohol, tobacco and pharmaceuticals. So what we'd like to see is far more regulation and control of those large companies in order to make legalisation work.
This is a molecular model for a drug we believe caused the death of both Tanya Williams and Josie Mills. And this is a licensed molecular model for an Amita Pharmaceuticals product, X4P.
Yes, it's a cardiovascular drug we developed. There were no similarity.
Well, on their own, no. But you recently put forward a base patent on a non-licensed drug, dexclorazole. And if you combine X4P and dexclorazole at a molecular level, you'll get... That'll make you feel euphoric 1 minute and give you heart failure the next.
Who has access to these two drugs? And who would hand out unlicensed Amuta Farm products in nightclubs?
Lights. Messages.
They're asking me lots of questions about girls ODing, drugs and nightclubs. So far, I have amnesia. You want it to stay that way? Get me out of here.
You looking for these?
So, I had some Amuta products. What are you gonna do, charge me with theft?
You had enough to medicate London. I intend to supply.
They're all legits. Available from any internet pharmacy. Christ. Any courier will deliver them to your door.
What's your relationship with Mark Pavel?
Pavel does some freelance research for me.
What kind of research?
He provides my department with an insight into the club scene. You know, youth culture.
Does that include handing out free drugs to clubbers so they'll buy your product? Your boss, Dr. Kadjia, said your bonuses were based on sales.
Is there a point to this?
These girls die because of drugs handed out to them in a club a few days ago. Mark Pavel was in that club.
I want to speak to my lawyer.
That drug was a combination of Amuta Farm products.
This is X4P. Now this is dexclorazole. Impossible to purchase, and it was found at your residence. Now this drug blended with X4P is what caused the death of both Tanya Williams and Josie Mills.
Now listen. Our industry is riddled with counterfeiting. Half the labs in India cook up billions of counterfeit pills. We're lucky if we can keep patents safe for 2 months. Everybody with a chemistry set is having a go.
Charge him.
You're making a mistake.
I can live with that.
Counterfeiting will increase when recreational drugs are legalized. Counterfeiting drugs has been with us since the alchemists of the 13th century. It's been getting worse over the last decade. Between 7 and 10% of all drugs consumed in the world are now counterfeit. That equates to 20 to 30 billion pounds.
Dealers would always be able to undercut a legalised system because these commodities are cheap and dealers wouldn't be paying any taxes of any sort. It's a black market economy. They will always undercut, as they do now in various commodities that we see on the streets.
Counterfeited drugs won't be attractive under a legalised regime. Why would you go and buy that as opposed to something of provenance that's been overseen by off-drug? You'd be a fool to go and buy it from some dodgy bloke round the corner rather than a regulated outlet.
Wherever you've got demand, you'll get somebody providing a product which imitates the genuine product. The example is the tobacco industry. 20% of the UK's tobacco is either smuggled or fake or both.
Off-Drug Commissioner Richard Hardy found himself under fire today when he refused to release details about a possible break in the case surrounding the deaths of Tanya Williams and Josie Mills.
In a joint investigation between Off-Drug and the National Crime Bureau, 2 people have been arrested and charged with offences relating to the deaths of 2 young women in London.
Did a drug company kill Tanya and Josie?
I have no further...
The government continues to defend its policy on the legalisation of drugs.
So, Parvel will rat out Gibson and Gibson will take down a Mutter farm. It'll take more than a few expensive lawyers to whitewash.
Off-drug come out of it looking pretty good, huh?
Nice, neat and tidy.
All wrapped up.
Something bothering you?
Nothing.
Have one on me. Night, Jack.
Ladies and gentlemen, this tragedy shows that the government's legalisation policy is a disaster and should be scrapped immediately. It's just a pity it takes bodies on the ground before this government takes notice.
I wonder why it always happens this way.
What way?
It always takes a few bodies on the ground before anyone does anything.
The anti-legalization lobby and its supporters are citing this tragedy as evidence of the policy's failure and are demanding a reversal of all drug laws.
Ryan's been on the force 8 years. His street IQ's unsurpassed. He's been down deep and dirty.
How are you?
Oh, you know me.
Do I know you?
What kind of criminal?
Yeah, but a criminal for the right side.
You get it? Lights on.
Off the record, I think he's damaged goods.
Get right down! Come on! Up, boys! Up against the wall! Up against the wall! Up, boys! Okay, palms on the wall! Face the wall!
Well, we have been busy bees. What's this? It's wearing a wire.
What is it?
Oh, shit.
What is it? What is it?
No! Against the wall! Back!
If we just carry on as we are, the health risks, the violent crime, the thefts to fund heroin habits, crack cocaine habits will get worse and worse, and the quality of life, particularly in cities, will get steadily worse.
Drugs are harmful and dangerous, and they're socially destructive for us all. We don't need a cure that's worse than the disease.
You all right?
What are you doing here?
I remember what you said.
Don't you think you should call the fire department or something?
It didn't make sense.
What?
Pavel and Gibson poisoning those girls, it didn't make sense. And then I remember what you said. And I thought I'd been looking at this whole investigation backwards. If I wanted to bring an end to legalization, what would do it? A few bodies on the ground before anyone does anything.
That's an interesting theory.
You counterfeited Amuta Farm products, cooked up that poison and gave it to those girls.
And you can prove that.
They're dead! Huh? Dead!
No!
Tell me why.
Have you ever seen a baby born to a mother who's an addict, Jack? 5 minutes old and it's screaming its lungs out because it's suffering from withdrawal. You know, it grows, but it's not normal. Its mind isn't all there. It can't talk. It can't learn. It makes mistakes. You have to watch it all the time. You know, and then one day, your attention slips just for a second. It's gone. And the next thing you know, you're screaming in the middle of the road, holding your dead child.
Josie Mills was innocent.
You want people to realise what you've realised. You can't whisper in their ear. You've got to hit them with a sledgehammer. You've never done the wrong thing for the right reasons.
My speciality is betrayal.
You know, if you drug squad guys shared a bit more information, these cock-ups might not happen. You ever been fishing? The bait always dies. Prohibition began as an honest and noble experiment in reducing drug misuse. It's now become a policy that is ignoble and dishonest based upon fear and prejudice and no evidence whatsoever. One day we'll look back on this period with incredulity and a sense of tragedy that we continued it for so long.
The trial of Carrie Lucas, the chemist accused of the murders of Josie Mills and Tanya Williams, continues today. Lucas has been a spokeswoman for the anti-drugs lobby since her son was born mentally disabled due to her previous addiction. Her lawyers maintain that the evidence against her is purely circumstantial. And it also transpired that a key witness, NCB Inspector Jack Rydell, had a history of drug abuse while working undercover prior to legalisation.
One of the biggest problems about legalizing drugs is that more and more people would have free access to them, and they would be damaging their health and rendering themselves incapable of contributing to society. That's something I don't want to see.
I'll take him from here.
Just wanted to say goodbye.
Something like that.
Let me ask you a question. How does it feel to shop to the one you love? Because let's face it, we did both love Chloe, didn't we? And now she rots in prison, and you put her there. What's that?
Prohibition was licensed about 6 years ago. It's prescribed to people with post-traumatic stress disorder. Helps you forget.
Josie!
Josie!
Josie! Josie! Josie! Are you going to get someone? What's happened to her? What's happened to her?
Legalisation of all the currently illegal drugs would be quite a terrifying scenario. And what I see with drugs legalised is far more users, far more in-depth use, far more polydrug use. So legalised drugs, and you've got a very bad scenario where some of these things are going to be used heavily by people for most of their working life and beyond. And of course, some of them are not going to survive.
I believe people should have the freedom of choice to do what they want to their own bodies if it's not infringing on anybody else.
Where? Toilets! What's their condition? Wasting. You don't have to be a doctor to see that.
Some water, quick! Josie! Mom! Mom!
Can you hear me? Josie, can you hear me?
She doesn't look too good.
Neither do you.
Her heart rate's all over the place.
You're going to be okay, babe. You're going to be okay.
What has she taken?
A few E's, some blues. I don't know, just what they sell in here.
We only sell licensed legit.
Thousands of people use drugs every weekend because they can get some enjoyment out of that from what can be otherwise a boring life.
It's going to be a fine night tonight. It's going to be a fine night
Prohibition is a singular failure. It's failed on its own terms to reduce the amount of drugs and to affect the prices significantly. We now have more drugs in this country than ever before at far cheaper prices. We'd like to see drugs legalised throughout the entire supply chain, from production to use. So we might see cannabis available from licensed retailers in the same way that tobacco is. Pharmaceutical drugs like LSD and ecstasy available from specialist pharmacists. Cocaine and heroin probably only available under prescription from a doctor.
I'd really like it if people could go to buy their drugs legally without being criminalised, and know what they were getting and know that that was as safe as it could be.
I don't accept the proposition that our current system has failed. Most people are not lifelong users of drugs. There may be some experimentation when they're young, but they don't carry on.
People take drugs because they want to and because they feel they've got that right, and most of the time there's not a lot stopping them. You can get psychedelic drugs that make you hallucinate and enhance your vision. There are stimulant drugs such as ecstasy and amphetamines which can keep yourself going and make you feel more charged up.
I'm stardust, baby.
Welcome to Media Break. You give us 3 minutes and we'll give you the world. Yesterday's controversial vote in the Commons passing legislation to end the criminalisation of narcotic possession is being hailed as the first major step to what in time could be complete legalisation.
How are you?
You know me. Bit of a mess, really.
Do I know you?
In 30 years as a serving police officer, in every rank from constable to chief constable, I've dealt with drugs in one way or another. And as the problem has got bigger, more unmanageable, it becomes clearer and clearer that the only way to deal with it is by legalization.
Legalising and regulating drugs is the only way to collapse the illegal drug markets created by prohibition and to reclaim the market back from the gangsters.
Legalising drugs is a leap in the dark. We are going to have to pay an enormous amount in money, in human tragedies, and the consequences are going to be very heavy on somebody's conscience.